whether it's in your role or whether it's in school or whatever. I'm more than happy to help however I can. Yeah, please embrace this opportunity, because I can tell you that it will pay for itself 10 times over. You guys have, and ladies have picked an incredible industry to be a part of, an incredible industry to learn from. And I mean, I'm a flexible packaging dork, I'll admit it. I have pictures of me in a box of resin when I was 2. I was doing elongation testing when I was 5. That's the quick rundown on me. So with that all being said, I wish you all the best this summer. Enjoy it. I know it's not all of you are not going to be experience it like you probably hoped or wished, but embrace and take the learnings, because it will pay for itself. And I wish you all the best, and look forward to meeting all of you and connecting with all of you moving forward.
Great. Thanks, Jonathan. So, I mean, the big word I would provide you guys is the word perspective. Our objective this summer is to give you a program that provides perspective on what you're doing in your summer roles, right? We want you to meet people upstream that may be your suppliers. And then certainly if you get an opportunity, it's always nice to meet, the folks downstream who you're selling to, and then kind of all the entire ecosystem around you. And so that's our objective here, is for you to get some perspective and have an opportunity to network with others across the industry. So let's talk about the program and what to expect. Really 3 components, and we're going to use the word S over and over and over again. I noticed we've got the summer speaker series, we've got your small group sessions, and then you've got your summer project. In your summer speaker series, those are going to be on Fridays at 10 a.m. Central, pretty much every other week throughout the summer. So we'll have one this week, this Friday will be our first one. In 2 weeks, we'll have another one, and then so on and so forth. We'll take the week of July 4th off, so there'll be no events that week, but we'll get right back at it the week after. And I'll walk through a couple of the speakers we've got lined up for you. Then we've got our small group sessions. I'm a really big fan of, big groups, but I also love the conversation, the dialogue, the chance to really get to know a smaller group of 5 to 6 people closely. And so that's what we're trying to do through the small group sessions. You're going to have someone from the ELC, the Emerging Leadership Council. They're going to be your small group leader, and they're going to schedule a 1 hour every other week small group session where you'll get a chance to talk about something going on in the industry. Could be about careers, could be your personal, professional growth, could be really anything. And each of the group leaders are kind of tasked to have their own look and flavor to it. And so that's a chance for you to get to really know 5 or 6 people outside of your company a little bit better. And then we've got this aspiration. It's the summer project. So in a couple weeks, we'll see how the program's going. And we have one big favor of you is that if you were in our shoes and you had a chance to market this industry and what you know of it so far, how would you narrate this industry to the future use? And we've got this campaign, and we're going to call it Come Grow With Us. And it has kind of that double meaning, right? Come grow with us, meaning our industry is growing in a fantastic way. And we want to really build people to grow and develop while they're a part of our industry. And so we're going to really task this group to help us kind of remarket. Think about us as a brand, and we need to rebrand ourselves. I always think of Buick, right? My wife always tells me those Buick commercials, just nail it, because Buicks are old cars, but they sound really cool on the commercial. We're maybe not the Buick, but let's just consider that we need to do some rebranding like the Buick marketing folks do. And so the summer project will be all about kind of helping us relaunch ourselves back to not only entry-level folks like you coming out of colleges, universities, and technical schools, but also, people in the middle of their careers that are maybe looking for an industry that's growing and vibrant and having a lot of companies that are investing in it. So really excited about the summer project, but let's call that aspirational, depending on how things are going in the first couple of weeks. The 2 key pillars will be the summer speaker series and the small group session. So let's quickly walk through some of the speakers because I'm very excited about them. Number one, we've got Allison later on in this hour, and she'll be touching on the state of the industry. In a couple weeks, we're going to have a CEO from one of our member companies. We're still finalizing those details, but we'll have them over to you. And again, these will be on Friday at 10 a.m. Central, 11 a.m. Eastern. Then in the beginning of July, we've got a really neat opportunity. One of my actual professors from grad school, from MBA school, he just wrote a best-selling book called The Human Element. And so I've got a chapter of that book that it's going to be released in October. It's already, before it's been launched, as a best-selling book on Amazon. And so you guys will get a copy of this book in October. We'll somehow get it to you when you're back at college, or maybe deliver it to your homes. But the professor who's written this book is going to do a 1-hour session with us in July to talk a little bit about the psychology of business and how to kind of navigate not only professionally, but also your personal lives in a way that's a little bit more strategic than maybe at the surface level would look like. Then later in July, we've got an awesome sustainability workshop. Sustainability is so key to our industry right now. And so we've got 3, honestly, leaders and pioneers in this space: Fabio Pierre from Amcor, Sal Palingra from ProAmpac, and David McLean from PrintPack are going to do a one really kind of super session on sustainability. And so that should be a really neat opportunity to kind of learn it from some of the leaders in our industry. And then finally, as we get kind of wrap up the summer, we're going to do an ELC career panel discussion just to kind of walk through some of our profiles, where we've gone, where we've meandered through the industry. Some of us have really grown up the ranks in one company, and some of us have maybe jumped around a little bit. And so we want to give you a little bit of a flavor of that. So some more finalization will take place on this speaker series. Just remember, we'll be sending meeting requests out. They'll generally all be Friday mornings, and just accept them and make sure to do your best to attend those, because they should be really valuable opportunities to, again, learn a little bit about the industry. I'm a big planner, so I wanted to get the schedule out there. And you guys will have these slides, but your blue stars are your summer speaker series dates. Your small group sessions, that orange bar, will be tentatively when your small group leader will schedule the group sessions. In most instances, your small group leader will really shoot to have their session on Friday mornings. But in some instances, maybe that's not possible because of scheduling conflicts amongst the group. And so it'll be sometime during that week for 1 hour at a time. Okay. All right, so your small group leaders, again, I'll send this out, and I'll actually have a Google form that I'll send you guys a link to. And so we've got, 7 group leaders. We split everybody up as best as possible. Hopefully there's not 2 people from the same company, but if not, we've done our best here. And again, to the things to remember here, your small group leader is going to reach out by Monday, end of day, with the plan for the first small group session. And we're shooting for all of the first group sessions to be next Friday during this time. And then after that, the schedule may go off of a Friday, depending on schedules. But we've got 7 awesome group leaders. Obviously, I'm one of them, so I think they're awesome. But Abby as well will be leading up the small group program with me. And so I would hope you really enjoy that. And from time to time, we'll kind of do group mixers. So we'll kind of combine 2 groups at a time so you guys can get a little bit of a flavor of a different group leader as well as folks from a different group. So I get really excited about that. When I send out the final summary email with these slides, again, there's going to be a Google Doc in there, and we kind of want to capture a little bit of information from you, kind of field a study, what you're doing this summer, where you're located in your graduation year. So you're going to see a bunch of columns next to your names, and just ask you that you'd fill out that information. I know COVID is absolutely still looming around, and a lot of geographies are opening up. And so if we find that we've got a lot of interns, let's say in the Chicago area, and companies and individuals are comfortable with us meeting up, we do want to take the opportunity to maybe schedule some in-person events if it makes sense. And so we just want to know kind of where everybody's residing so that we can see if there's any clusters of folks that are willing and able to get together. Second thing I want to run past you is really cool. So a lot of companies in our industry subscribe to something called industry intelligence. It's basically like a crash course every day of everything going on in the industry. It's any article that comes out about a member company or maybe a brand owner or maybe upstream at the raw material suppliers. This program, this service will really jam in everything in one report every single day. And so we've customized a report that's really designed for you guys to get a real quick glimpse of what's going on in the industry on a daily basis. And so we've molded that together. You're going to get free access over the summer, which is really, really neat. And the first report should start coming into your inbox on Monday. And I just kind of urge you to take a look at it every couple days, every day, just to kind of scan through some of the headlines, maybe click on some of the articles. I know our small group leaders will certainly pick some articles from there to kind of help stimulate discussions. And then there is also a back-end program from the report, and we'll do a quick training later this summer, probably in the next couple of weeks, to get you acquainted with this service, just so you can kind of use that to really dive in and, again, learn everything you can about what's going on in the industry. A couple other housekeeping items before I hand it off to Allison. Again, the Google Doc, we'll want to just get that stuff filled out. I've already touched on that. Accept the meeting requests whenever you can. Look out for your email from your small group leader. Should be coming out by the end of the day, Monday. And then finally, program sponsors, we invited you today just to keep you guys in the loop. We'll check in with you probably in July, but for any of the information that comes out, no need to, of course, attend any of the meetings or anything like that. We just want to make sure our program sponsors are kept in the loop, and we'll do our best to do that. Last thing, just kind of an etiquette thing. When you are on your small group sessions, I know it'd be great if your video's on, if your audio's on. We really want you to be engaged. And I know when I throw myself off video and put myself on mute, I'm probably not the best attendee to a meeting. And really, if we're just trying to set that culture and that dynamic where we want everyone engaged, really ask that you guys be 100% there. So appreciate that already in advance. With that, Allison, if it's okay, can I hand it off to you and make you co-host so you can share your screen?
Yes.
Awesome, thank you. Guys, and while we're transitioning, any questions? Anything we may have covered a little too fast? Okay, fantastic. I'll send over to you. Let me know if you can share.
Can you see that? Yet?
Yep, sure
Okay,
can.
cool. Excellent. So thanks so much for having me this morning. I'm happy to kick off the internship program. I have to say that, like Jonathan said, he came to FPA with this idea of the Emerging Leadership Council probably about 2 years ago. We really kicked it off probably about a year ago, full force. But this is really the first, sort of programmatic element that we've done, and I think it's been phenomenal, everything that the ELC is doing. And this is really the start of, I think, something really special, and probably the start of us bringing back our FPA internship program that Jonathan spoke a little bit about. So thanks everybody for participating. I see there's 42 people today, so we got a really good response, and I think you'll learn a lot. So I'll just dive in a little bit about the association. Folks may not be aware of association work. I certainly wasn't when I started my career, and I can tell you that it's huge. There's really literally an association for everything, particularly when it comes to manufacturing. And you may be familiar with some of the associations from a personal standpoint. So like I'm a lawyer, so I belong to the American Bar Association. You may belong to some chemical associations, but this is really company association specific. So it's companies that come in that are protecting a very specific market in the US and globally. And the association resides usually someplace around DC. We're actually in Annapolis, right outside DC. And we work really on, what I call, the 4-pillar approach. Generally speaking, we're here to advocate, to, mitigate bad regulations, or bad legislation. We'll talk a little bit about that today. But also to be proactive with good regulations and good legislation that helps the industry, and to protect the industry. We also develop a tremendous amount of data, both for internal use, member companies, so that they can benchmark where they should be, where they want to go, but also outside, so for policymakers, for consumers, for their customers, the brand owners, for the entire supply chain. So we'll talk a little bit about that today as well. And then providing networking opportunities and educational opportunities, which this is really part of that today, even though you're at the beginning of your stage, and hopefully, you fall in love with flexible packaging the way the rest of us have, and you stay as you get out of school and you come work in some capacity for us. That's part of it. And then once you're in it, we want to continue to create those networking opportunities, not only within the industry, but again, across the supply chain. So Flexible Packaging Association has associate members, so like a charter, Next Generation, that provides film. We also have folks that provide foil, paper, and a multitude of others. And then we have the converters that actually make all of the packaging. But then we have the brand owners, right, that buy the packaging, and we have a whole host of folks in between. So we really try to provide those networking opportunities so that everybody can get in front of their customers or potential customers, and talk about solutions. And again, we're going to talk a lot about this today, solutions for the entire supply chain. And when you have your sustainability panel later on in the summer, you're going to hear a lot about that as well. And then finally, obviously promotion. So, your social media, your magazine, anything that can promote the industry, again, internally, but also to consumers, to policymakers, to folks that are in the supply chain. So that's really what we do. The packaging industry right now, these are a little outdated. I'm waiting for my new numbers for 2020. We've been a little off with our surveying and some of the numbers because of COVID, but 33.6 billion of the 177 billion US industry in packaging is flexible. And you can see we're 19%, so we're second only to corrugated cardboard at 24% in the United States. That is US. Globally, flexible packaging is actually the #1 packaging type. A lot of that has to do with emerging markets like India, Eurasia, where they didn't start out with glass and cans and cardboard. They really started out with flexible packaging. But I hope to see that number jump in the next several years and hopefully overtake corrugated sooner rather than later. Although I will say, and I often do, most of our companies make more than just flexible packaging. So we are agnostic about substrate, but we are passionate about flexible taking over where it can. In the end, the packaging industry, I think, is fully 100% behind using the right packaging for the product, right? Product protection is #1. So there's always going to be a place, I think, for all those packaging types. But we'll talk a little bit again today about why flexible is really taking over a lot of market share where it can. So this is what we look like. Number of companies is fairly large. FPA represents probably about 70 to 80% of that revenue. Many of the companies are very small printers. When we talk about converting, we really talk about doing more than one thing, taking that film, the foil, the paper, converting it, printing it, and really making that final product. Some of the converters that you see in this 400+ number really may just be doing one of those things. This is where we are. This is the segments that we are in. And if you take beverage and pet food and put it together with food, that's obviously #1. We're getting close to 70% there. So heavily invested in food packaging with regard to flexible. And then you can kind of see where everything else rounds out as far as what we're actually using the flexible packaging for. Industrial applications, commercial applications, medical and pharma looks small, but it's actually a fairly big segment for us, and a very niche segment as well for any of you folks that are interning for any of the companies that have a medical segment. It's pretty fascinating. And of course, during COVID came into play, much more than it ever has before as far as heightened consumer awareness. This is really where we are. Like I said, we're agnostic about the type of substrate. However, the polyethylene, polypropylene, which we call polyolefins, plastic is really the biggest segment within our industry. So lots of plastic, whether alone monomaterial or together multi-material. You're still going to have quite a large segment of our industry that has some plastic within its flexible packaging. And again, we'll talk about why that's more important than ever these days. Good industry growth, basically, higher than the GDP growth rate, profit year over year. We did have a downturn with everybody else in 2008, 2009, but well above those levels now, and don't really see a big sort of recession happening. Here's some growth rates within the actual segments. Again, I pulled up a lot of the food segments. And that is the growth plus projected growth rate to 2024. You can see that all of them are, above, and most of them are double digits. And then you can see some in the beauty and personal care and the beverage as well. So great growth rate, and we haven't really seen it slowed down. As a matter of fact, like I said, there's an association for everything. I have a lot of friends that are in the association world for gaming, casinos, for tourists, both hotel and airline. They were severely, severely impacted as the manufacturing sectors and service sectors in the United States. We were not. Packaging became much more important. And again, I think, it really highlighted to the consumer and to policymakers the importance of packaging, the importance of sterility and safety in packaging to provide not only food, but your PPE and your health and hygiene items, as we were all stockpiling, tissue paper and sanitary wipes. So food demand surged during, COVID again. So where we might have lost some market share with regard to in-person dining or commercial dining, if you think about cafeterias at your schools or hospital cafeterias all being shut down. Again, most of our member companies and most converters and suppliers to the industry have a very broad portfolio. So where they lacked market development in some areas, market development in other areas like PPE, like e-commerce, like packaged foods, like staples, really helped and made sure that we were in a really good position going forward, unlike some of the other, like I said, service industries and manufacturing industries in the United States. So just really quickly, taking a look at, that packaged food, we call this the middle of the grocery store. So folks went back to staples that could sit on shelves, maybe not have to be refrigerated. They went back to frozen food items. They went back to things that they could cook at home. And so we saw a huge surge in what we call the middle of the grocery store aisles. And you can just see, this is from Euromonitor International, one of our consumer product consultants. You can see cooking ingredients and meals, dairy products. It's hard for me to see with them. I'm just going to move this over. So the blue basically was the current year growth in 2020 during the midst of COVID. And you can see just how big that was based on the growth rate from 2015 to 20. And then you can see what we think it's going to go back to 2020 to 2025. So still, in most cases, double-digit growth. And we'll still see, some growth over the 2015 to 2020 going back. It'll be very interesting to see. I'm waiting to get a lot of the 2020, 2021 numbers. That's one thing that FPA does really well, and we'll have those probably by September. It'll be interesting to see if folks really, really do change their habits, or if some folks like myself continue to do a lot of e-commerce, which I didn't before. So e-commerce was projected to grow, double digits.
Do you mind if I jump in for a second? I mean,
yeah, go ahead.
Anecdotally, it seemed like our industry really took advantage of low interest rates and really capitalized itself really well with new equipment over the last 7 or 8 years. So when COVID hit, it seemed like there was enough surge capacity to really kind of seize the moment and support the industry. Is there anything like you could share about like what you heard about companies going through in March and April of last year, to be able to kind of like, you know, I think about it as like, show your stripes kind of moment, like really step up to the call.
Yeah, I mean, I think for the most part, the industry did step up to the call. It is a newer, quote unquote, flexible packaging has been around since 1950s, but I think in the last 20 years has grown, tremendously. And because of that, a lot of newer assets were on board. Many of our companies actually switched assets over. So they were able to continue making what they need to make for their customers, but they were also able to switch assets and help with the COVID response, right? So making packaging for hand sanitizer, making more packaging for the supply chain with regard to PPE, masks, think of anything that, the films that you could use for the, the masks, either this way or the full on. So many folks switched over assets, so they were able to do that and help with the COVID-19 response and recovery, as well as making, their current products. The biggest issue, there was two big issues we had back in March, April, I would say really into June of last year, was trying to figure out the regulations because they were not consistent across the United States with regard to manufacturing. And in some cases, we're not consistent within a state, right? So if you were in California, you might have different regulations on who could come to work and when they could come to work and how they could get to work, et cetera, in the Bay Area and San Francisco area than you would in the rest of California, or maybe you had, LA. And then the second thing I would say is there was definitely supply chain disruption because of that, because of not knowing whether or not you were essential infrastructure, essential workers. And there was some stoppage and shortage depending on, what the federal government said, and then how quickly each individual state, and then in some cases counties, adopted that. There was a supply chain disruption, and that's why you saw, empty shelves for a little while, and people, sort of hoarding and stockpiling and things like that. So that, I mean, I think that was not something that we could predict. I mean, this was something that, globally, the pandemic that nobody had ever faced before. And I think, I'm super proud to be part of this industry that they just turned on a dime. Once we got that designation from the federal government that, we were critical workforce infrastructure, packaging, whether it be food or commodities, folks went back to work. They went back to work safely. People, our members put in protocols. And they started, making packaging again, and that supply chain really turned around very quickly. So, yeah, they really stepped up to the plate, and I think in some cases still are with regard to the recovery. Think about just all the medical packaging you need for all the distributions of the vaccine, and much of that is flexible packaging. So, yeah, it's been an important industry, and I think again, I think the policymakers and the consumers see that now. So we'll talk a little bit about the headwinds we have with regard to packaging and why that has changed a little bit because of our response during COVID-19.
Yeah, and then Jonathan, just to see if you have any thoughts on this, but I think the longer lasting positive impact will be like the repatriation of packaging. I mean, we still, as an industry, had a lot of imported packaging coming in from Asia. And I think the fact that, a lot of brands kind of maybe over the last 7 or 8 years had, imported their packaging because of cost reasons, are kind of have been rethinking that supply chain tremendously and hopefully buying North American. So I think that dynamic hopefully will be one of the positive impacts that'll drive our growth. But Jonathan, any comments? Or Adrian, I know I just saw you were on the call as well. And if you guys have thoughts, just to kind of create some dialogue here.
Yeah, no, I think Allison said it very similar to how I would say it, and how proud I am to be a part of the flexible packaging industry, and how critical we've been able to being and making everyday life possible. I think that everybody that is been a part of the industry. And I think all of you as interns right now are going to get a chance to see how the roles that you play are really making everyday life feasible. And we're able to combat kind of some of the misunderstanding associated with the anti-plastic, anti-packaging sentiment, and really showcase the value that flexible packaging can bring and does bring. So all of those things are enabling and giving brands an opportunity that they may have not had prior to the pandemic. So all of those things add up to just a really bright future, I would say, for the industry and for long careers for everybody.
Yeah, I will say one of the things that we saw through the pandemic is, folks are moving into a lot more from a sustainability standpoint, reusable packaging. But when the pandemic hit, you don't want bags coming back into stores that are reused. You don't want, food service ware that's being reused. So the single use components were ones that were actually more necessary in that environment. And talk to pivoting, folks had kind of pivoted away somewhat to that, but needed to move back and be able to fill those assets. And they were able to do it because they had that capacity and capability. So I think the industry really did step up during COVID. And I think the value, to Jonathan's point around flexible packaging and the necessity of it, really became much more front and center.
Thanks, Adrian. And just to introduce Adrian, she's the co-chair with Jonathan of the ELC, and also has a member of her family as a part of our program. So really lucky to have both of you. And thanks for joining. Allison, sorry to interrupt. I'll hand it back to you.
No, it's good to see the littlest member of our packaging team with little Quinn there. So the other thing I'm excited to see when we see some of these new numbers that we do through our surveys and through our partners is e-commerce sales were supposed to be fantastic, and they were, and then they jumped even farther. And again, a lot of folks were starting to use e-commerce for not just commodities, but for food and other deliveries that you wouldn't necessarily normally see. And to Apurva's point, much of the supply chain disruption after that first sort of initial disruption was imports. And I don't have any slides on imports, but we have a lot of different slides on imports, if anybody's imports and exports, if you're interested. And when you import and you have disruptions from commerce, you could be waiting weeks, months for something. So that's where it comes back to, can you get it domestically? Can you get it in North America? Can you get it faster? And I think that really did help in some cases bring some manufacturing back that I hope that we'll see stay. And then, it also really moved, I think, the needle with regard to flexible packaging and e-commerce, because again, like we are new packaging, quote unquote, from the 50s, really in the last 20 plus years. We are fairly new packaging in e-commerce as well. And we're really fast gaining ground on that. And let's talk a little bit about that, why.
I just wanted to maybe piggyback off of that comment around e-commerce. And I don't think I mentioned this in the beginning of when I first introduced, but my role is the e-commerce and protective packaging shrink market manager. And I've been living in the e-commerce as associated with flexible packaging, that realm of things, for the past 5+ years. And what is really crazy to think about is how over the course of the past 10 years, how much e-commerce has grown. And if you take the previous 3 years and you compare it to the 3 months of growth that we saw in April, May, and June of last year, it was the equivalent of that. So virtually it doubled almost overnight. And that has caused an opportunity and a challenge for the industry. And any of the people that are any of you that are interns and you are packaging engineers, and the thing to think about is packaging has always been designed to be in a vertical state. E-commerce, essentially, packaging needs to be designed for 360 degrees of impact, and it needs to be designed for so much uncertainty, because you literally have to design and begin to think about how packaging can go in a box with a bag of cement, a bowling ball, a bag of chips, and a bottle of Coke. Like, that's literally the point that you have to begin to think about. So think, as you go through your time, begin to think about your time and your everyday life as a consumer and the experiences that you have with packaging, but then think about how you can make them better because of the roles and responsibilities that you have today.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's super innovative to that point too, because that's what you're thinking about. Again, product protection is number one. If the product doesn't get to the consumer in the state that it's supposed to, you're going to have more environmental and less sustainability, right? More environmental damage. You're going to have to go back, recreate that product, and or have food waste, et cetera. So flexible packaging, the reason it has taken off is because it has so many good benefits, both from a sustainability aspect, but also from aspects that you might not really think about. So hopefully after this internship, if you're not already shopping in a different way, you will be. I cannot go into the store. None of my family members can go into the store or pharmacy anymore without looking at the packaging and saying, oh, is this yours? Is this new? You know, what's happening here? But you think about how lightweight it is. So the least amount of product to protect, or packaging to protect the product. You think about the consumer ease of use, being able to use it once and then seal it back up, use it again and again and keep it fresh. Just the variety of products that can be in it. And we'll talk a little bit more about more sustainability aspects, but even product security and integrity. I mean, you think about some of the films now that can show you if your meat is, you know, sort of on the edge, or you shouldn't eat it because it's, you know, it's not going to be still fresh and good for you. And you think about, you know, the product protection when it comes to anti-child, you know, not being able to get a child not being able to get into like over-the-counter drugs or prescription drugs, things like that. Just you saying that looks like it's already been opened, so maybe I'm not going to buy that, or or give it back, kind of thing. So these are the type of things that you don't really think about as a normal consumer, but you can start thinking about from an innovative way, being, you know, part of the flexible packaging industry. And let's just talk a little bit about the sustainability benefits, because brands are always looking for that next level of sustainability, right? They want lightweight, they want resource efficient, they want less greenhouse gas emissions, they want to fight the waste, they don't want more food waste. And again, you want to protect the product, extend that shelf life, make sure it gets to you as the consumer as it should, and you don't have to ship it back or throw it away. So flexible packaging really gives them all of that. It's low cost because you're using less material in the first place. You get a tremendous amount of resource recovery from less water usage, less energy usage, less greenhouse gas emissions from manufacture, but also transporting, right? It's lighter weight, it's smaller. You're going to use less trucks on the road to get it to where it needs to be. And then in the end, we have many, many, many life cycle analysis that show you that even if today, if it's not recycled, you are still putting less amount of material, packaging material, in the landfill than you would even for the most recyclable of products like aluminum cans, because we just don't have that high of a recycling rate for any of our recyclable products today. Having said that, however, we are working on a variety of ways to get to that last, what I call the last piece of the circularity puzzle. So from the beginning of manufacturing of flexible packaging all the way to when the consumer opens it and reuses it, until disposal, we are number one when it comes to sustainability and environmental footprint. What we don't have yet is the opportunity for collection, recycling, and reuse completely. There are some, but not a full circularity. So our biggest issue right now that FPA works on behalf of members is this issue of packaging, single-use package plastics, circularity. The consumer and policymakers, they don't see the difference. They see plastics, they hear plastics are bad, They're not sure which get recycled and what doesn't. In some cases, they're not even sure if it's plastic or paper, because, you know, we can do such a great job in designing things that folks, you know, can't really tell. So what's happened is we've gotten a backlash from that, because there is so much leakage into the environment. Because for the longest period of time, up until about 2017, 18, when China cut us off, the United States was really exporting much of its quote unquote recyclable materials, which included lightweight plastics that weren't getting recycled once they got over to China or to India or to Malaysia. And then they were leaking into their environment. And then you see that, you know, the sort of the Pacific Gyre and a lot of other, now that's not just flexible packaging, it's all packaging, it's fishing gear, it's you know, it's just waste. But what floats to the top is the lightest, and that happens to usually be flexible packaging and plastic packaging. So we've really, go ahead.
I was just gonna say that that one of the hopes that I have for everybody is that at the end of and during your time and by the end of the summer, that you will all be able to and will want to be advocates for flexible packaging and plastic packaging as a whole, and you will have a true and full understanding of the value that it brings. And I think everybody on the call that is in the industry and the companies that we work for 100% truly and genuinely believe that plastic does not belong in the environment, and we have to do a better job at collecting it and enabling a circular economy. And I mean, I don't think there's a single FPA member company that isn't investing and isn't supporting the overarching circular economy conversation. But we've got to promote the value and really help to educate our families, our friends, the people that you go to school with about the value of flexible packaging and what it does to enable and make everyday life possible. And the overarching conversation is that it is, from a life cycle analysis perspective, it is the best material. It is but also be okay with the fact that there is certain applications where plastic may not be the right application, and that's all right. But at the end of the day, we're all pushing and progressing this conversation forward.
Yeah, and that's this on this slide, that is an actual, before the world shut down last March, that is a picture of a protest to me, but more of a PR opportunity for a bill that we did not believe in California. That is downtown Sacramento, right? So none of us in this industry, once you learn about how important packaging is, whether it's plastic or not, and once you learn how sustainable flexible packaging is, we're all about figuring out final circularity. We're not about bans and we're not about plastic, but that's pretty difficult when you come up against, that's just on the sidewalk of Sacramento. That's pretty difficult to come up and say, wait, but let's listen to the science, let's listen to the facts. So we all need to do it together. And we've come up, hopefully, you know, with some ways to do that with, you know, at FPA. But literally, this is the legislation with regard to packaging, whether it was producer responsibility, so putting a fee on packaging to pay for its end of life management, or labeling for plastic or other types of packaging, for recyclability, for post-consumer recycled content, you name it. We had legislation still going in all of these states. California, we literally just last night at 8 o'clock defeated a bill that would have banned all plastic e-commerce packaging, right? So we just talked about that, right? And how important it is using the least amount, less greenhouse gas emissions for the transport to get it to, and then less waste in the first place. However, you know, because of this sentiment and because one policymaker did not have all of her facts, and actually e-commerce packaging is the easiest, the polyethylene bags right now to recycle. You have the store drop off, but because she wasn't listening to the facts, and, you know, really honestly had a beef about getting a big box from Amazon with a whole bunch of pillows in it for a little tiny thing, which we all hate, right? She was going to ban all flexible packaging for e-commerce. Luckily, we defeated that bill, but the fact that we had to work really hard to do it is very telling. So these were all the states that had some packaging legislation this year that would impact flexible. Also on the federal front, a couple of those we actually like, the Recover Act and the Recycle Act, Save Our Seas Act, fully supportive. We're looking for the infrastructure bill to have some money for recycling infrastructure. Again, we are not sending it to China anymore. Let's bring it back home. Let's have recycling infrastructure here in the United States, and let's be able to use that content, whether it's for you know, flexible packaging or otherwise. Let's bring it back and have post-consumer recycled content, full circularity. So that's what we're all working on. Obviously, there's other things that the association and the members are working on, but I think that's the biggest key area. And to Jonathan's point, the way we look at it is really twofold. Let's not ban any packaging. We need it all. As Jonathan said, maybe you don't need it plastic here or you need it there. That doesn't, let's stop with the banning. Like we saw the plastic bags and the straw. If you ban the top 10 things that are litter in the environment, then the next top 10 rise, right? So let's not ban it. Let's instead create funding and infrastructure, funding for infrastructure and infrastructure in the United States so that we can get all packaging into a circular environment. And then for the love of the Lord, please, I pray every night before I go to bed, let's have harmonization among the states, because you saw that list of states. If every single one of them has a different solution, that is not acceptable from a commerce standpoint, right? We don't make packaging or label packaging for California or Maine, right? We do it for North America and in some places globally. So again, that's something that we're all, from the entire supply chain, from the, you know, the suppliers to the converters to the brand owners, we're all working on solutions to try to get there. And that's why we have a ton of partnerships, and I want to be cognizant of time, so I'm not going to go through all these, but if anybody is interested in any of our partnerships with our brand owners, like the consumer brands or the recycling partnership that looks at that infrastructure and what it might look at, Ameripen, which does all packaging types, not just flexible, I'm happy to, you know, sort of download that information or get you in touch with them so that you can get maybe some on some of their webinars and calls too, if you have time this summer. And then just really quickly, these are all, if you get on our website, these are not behind the member firewall, but please, if you need to get behind that member firewall, do not hesitate to ask us. We will give you that permission this summer. We have a ton of reports looking at circularity. This is just one new one that looks at, you know, circularity from a design, collection, sortation, infrastructure, and end markets. It's got activities and outcomes for every single supply chain partner, all the way down to the waste management firms and the recyclers. And then life cycle, again, this is to promote the industry and to help the industry in our goals with regard to circularity. So it's not behind the member firewall. We share it freely with policymakers, with consumers. Tons of life cycle cost benefit analysis looking at the different packaging types. And luckily we had a very new e-commerce report and life cycle analysis that we were able to use again to defeat that bill in California and tell the real story of e-commerce and recycling of e-commerce packaging. So I'll wrap up because we're out of time, but you know, we may have headwinds, but to me, they're opportunities. And we're taking advantage of all those opportunities. We're engaging members, supply chain. You guys need to engage, you know, your folks, like Jonathan said, your family members, your hairdressers, you know, whoever, when and if we have all get back out into the open, and just make sure that you're telling the true story, and then helping us in that innovation and that technology to get to full circularity, because that's the last missing piece of the puzzle for us. So happy to take questions, maybe through email or something like that, so that you guys can get on with your day. But thanks so much for having me.
Thanks, Allison. Appreciate that. Well, guys, it is 11:01 Central, 12:01. So it's lunchtime for the folks on the East Coast. I don't want to keep you. Thank you guys so much for attending the kickoff session. I hit the record button a little late, but we'll record this. We'll get this up in a form that can be easily accessible. And you guys will get a wrap up email later this afternoon with kind of the couple things we need to knock out for housekeeping. And then we'll see you guys in 2 weeks for our next speaker. And you'll be hearing from your small group leader here by Monday, end of day. So thank you guys so much. We'll get these slides out here as well, so you have everything at your disposal. But appreciate everyone tuning in for the kickoff today, and look forward to getting to know you guys later this summer.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.